Hello, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you. And I really, truly hope that this year is happy and healthy for each one of us. Thank you to the people who have joined from Canada as some of our panelists, because it is 7 a.m. in the morning there, and I appreciate you all putting in the effort to join us this morning. A very warm welcome to this first session of 2022, which we are organizing in partnership with Pearson's and with the support of both the Indian High Commission in Canada and the Canadian High Commission in India. This session is of prime importance. It focuses on education technology and upskilling youth to international standards. The pandemic forced the world to go online. And EdTech has gained a lot of importance in today's world. But while it ensured that learning was available even when institutions were forced to close down, there were some challenges that came along with it. One of them, of course, was being not able to reach remote areas, which was very necessary, especially in a place like India. Therefore, the need to strengthen this area of EdTech. The pandemic also gave rise to a new kind of employment, a new kind of jobs which required special skills, and therefore, again, the need to upskilling the workforce. And therefore, today's session is geared towards advocating what are the elements that are working and which ones need to be addressed, which ones can we find solutions for. And we have the best of the people who represent all these different fields here today. And I'm very proud and honored to have them with me on this panel discussion, which is going to be extremely fruitful, I hope, for paving the way ahead. So I welcome and thank all the panelists who have joined today to give their insights on this subject. And now I would like to invite Ms. Annabelle LaRouche, Councillor Commercial and Senior Trade Commissioner at the High Commission of India, to deliver some remarks. Annabelle, over to you.
Thank you, Nadira. Well, good evening to participants in India and good morning, very early morning to participants in Canada. Thank you for the kind introduction, Nadira, and for the invitation. I'm very pleased to participate in this EdTech webinar, especially that is organized by our valued partner ICBC and Pearson. We have a very impressive list of panelists today, including Apurva Shrivastava, Consul General in Toronto, Denise Amiot, President and Chief Executive Officers of Colleges and Institute Canada, Siddharth Banerjee, Managing Director and Senior Vice President, India and Asia at Pearson, as well as Priya Thomas Monk, Senior Vice President at Pearson, and Vedmani Tiwari, CEO and Officiating CEO, NSDC. Very impressive list, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. First, I would like to say a few words on the organization I belong to with my colleague Anuj, who is also among the panelists today. So I'm part of the Trade Commissioner Service, a Government of Canada organization helping Canadian companies navigate international markets. In India, we have 8 offices and almost 50 officers working towards facilitating cross-border trade and investment between Canada and India, including in the education and EdTech sector. Now, let me say a few words on the Canada-India commercial relationship. It's becoming increasingly clear that India is one of Canada's fastest growing economic partners. The number of Canadian companies active in India continues to grow and now exceeds 1,000. And the number of Indian companies in Canada is also increasing, as a growing number of them are choosing Canada as an investment destination. And while the COVID pandemic has generated unprecedented global challenges, it has also highlighted the benefits of strong collaboration between Canada and India. Despite the fact that in-person meetings and business travel have been challenging, we are finding new ways to conduct business, to network, and to study, just like tonight. I would also like to say that one factor which contributes to the strength of our relationships is the strong people-to-people connection. India is now Canada's largest source country in all migration categories: student, workers, and permanent residents. And more than 1.4 million of Canadians trace their roots back to India. And if you consider that there are at least 34 direct flights every week between both countries, I think you can see the scale of the people-to-people connection between India and Canada. Now let's turn to the Canada-India academic relationship. The two countries signed an MOU in higher education cooperation in 2010 and renewed it in 2015. An organization like MyTax and the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute are acting as key facilitator to enable student mobility programs with the support of government funding. I would say that more and more Canadian universities and colleges are collaborating with Indian institutions in research, joint programs, and student and faculty exchange. It's very amazing to see that over 550 agreements are currently active across all disciplines. In Canada, Indian students from the biggest incoming cohort globally, and over 180,000 Indian students chose to study in Canada in 2020. And when it comes to EdTech, a couple of factors are driving the development of new learning tools and creating opportunities for much more collaboration between our both countries. One of them, as Nadira mentioned, is the COVID pandemic. So to meet the booming demand for remote learning, Canadian colleges and universities had to adapt very quickly and expand their offer to online and flexible learning. They developed in-depth expertise that can be shared with Indian academic institutions facing the same challenges. Also, to increase their revenues, higher education providers continue to expand virtual options to attract more students. Just in Canada, online registrations are growing at approximately 10% per year, while face-to-face registrations are stable. So it shows the strong importance of having virtual options. This is also another area where both countries can share best practices. And finally, as companies struggle to find employees with the right skill sets, Indian companies and academic institutions can build on partnerships with Canadian counterparts to deliver workplace learning for credentials and develop improved corporate training programs using new technologies. And don't forget that we are there to help. The Trade Commissioner Service in India can help connect organizations in both countries and facilitate business and academic partnership. To conclude, I'm glad that despite the challenges of the Omicron wave in both countries, we're able to gather today. It's very inspiring to see that everyone is here to discuss ways to improve the quality of education and learning tools to better equip future generations with the knowledge and the skills they require to succeed in a fast-changing and highly competitive global environment. I wish you all very productive, very insightful discussions. I look forward to hear your comments, and thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. And stay safe. Over to you, Nadira.
Thank you, Annabelle. We now present a very important segment of this session, which is an interactive fireside chat. Annabelle, as you mentioned that, it is good to know that in spite of the pandemic, India-Canada relationships forged on. And I think one of the people who have been in the forefront of leading this initiative has been Ms. Apurva Srivastava, Consul General at the Indian Consulate in Toronto. And I'm very, very pleased to welcome you, Ms. Srivastava, as our special guest today. Ms. Srivastava has been instrumental in maintaining the India-Canada relationship during this difficult phase, as well as you have played a key role in advocating the need to empower India's youth, especially to meet the international standards and enable them to have the appropriate skills for jobs in Canada. Apurva, thank you very much for all the efforts that you have made in this direction. And I am delighted to welcome you today for this session. And also thank you for having got up at this time in the morning to accommodate us. Thank you, Mr. Srivastava. And now let me go on to welcome Ms. Denise Amyot, CEO at Colleges and Institutes Canada, for coming and being in this conversation with Ms. Srivastava and Ms. Monk. Denise, again, thank you for getting up at this morning. I've seen the coffee cup in your hand, so I hope that you are, all charged up for the conversation which is about to follow. Just for everybody's knowledge, CIC, the Colleges and Institutes Canada, is an essential engine which houses educational hubs where experienced professionals and educators work in partnership with local businesses, communities, and industries to offer students the skills they need to rapidly succeed in an evolving job market. I think that is so very important today. Welcome, Denise, to this conversation. And to take this conversation ahead, I would like to invite Ms. Freya Thomas Monk, Senior Vice President at Pearson. Pearson is also a partner for today's session. And I must mention that Pearson has been proactively advocating on several strategies in instructional technology, digital learning, resources, career readiness, and employability skills. So Freya, over to you to manage this conversation between the fabulous ladies and show us the way ahead. Over to you, Freya.
Thank you so much, Nadira, and for your interesting thoughts to open the session, Annabelle. Goodness, we could talk for hours on these topics, and I feel honoured to be sitting here with Apoorva and with Denise to talk them through some of the key themes. I thought I might just open with some of the themes that we see within Pearson, and then I will offer some questions to Apoorva and to Denise to take the conversation forward. In Pearson, we run what we call a global learning survey every year, and we look at some key trends in international education and in domestic education as a whole. And we're seeing that the clash of COVID-19 with the world's increasing reliance on technology has finally pulled the education systems around the world fully into the digital age. We've all seen that ourselves, both personally and professionally, I see. Nearly 9 in 10 people worldwide now believe that the internet access is a basic human right, so that underpins how everyone on this planet is working. Second, we see that equity issues in education are taking centre stage globally. We see that learners are concerned about how COVID is widening the gaps between those that have and those that do not have, especially for the younger students, so that equality of access is ever important for people around the world. And even though 78% of people globally believe that online learning has the potential to give more people access to a quality education, a vast majority, a huge 87%, worry that not everyone has access to the technology that they need. On the higher education side, we see that 74% of people globally say that fewer people will be able to afford a university education, and that's due to the affordability, the economic factors from the COVID-19 pandemic. We also see as another trend, the focus on new and innovative and practical skills has increased. So the pandemic has provided space and time to reflect, especially about careers and life moving forward. And we see that 56% of college students are reconsidering their career path as a result of the pandemic. So there's a lot of flux in the market as people are determining how to pursue their careers ahead. I've thrown some statistics there, looked at those key themes. They certainly resonate with me professionally and personally. So I may now just start to ask a few questions if I could. Denise, if I may, how can we use technology in the virtual classroom to ensure students are equipped for real world jobs? We talked about people looking at different job paths, but how can we use technology in a clever way?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to both Nadira and Freya. I'm very pleased to be here. Happy New Year to everybody. So to answer your questions, Freya, about how can we use technology in the virtual classroom, in fact, before we go there, I want to say that technology is not the solution for everything, okay? The good news is that we've made a leap because of the pandemic with respect to technology. We've been to places where we did not know we could go. And I think this is very important. That said, we should not forget that when we talk about professional and technical education and training, the hands-on is still very, very important. And the example that I will give about what technology has opened is the accessibility. Accessibility, of course, if you have access to the bandwidth, if you have access to internet. And that's why some of our colleges, in fact, were quite innovative in supporting students that didn't have access to internet. We've even seen drive-in, which is like if you go to see a movie outside, we saw drive-in parking for internet in the parking of the colleges. Canada is a big country, like India is a big country also. And we saw that because some students didn't have also equipment, we were able to provide them with equipment to ensure that they could take their course online. But the good news is the fact that when you offer educations with technology, it can be you can have access to the best learning anywhere you are. And we saw also that you could have asynchronous learning and fully remote. So it means that you can stay in your community. And I have to say that the government of Canada has been very supportive with respect to international students being authorized to do online learning, because normally you're supposed to be in the country. And we asked them, in fact, to make sure that the policy would allow this. The other thing that has happened with the pandemics is that we've seen a big increase of students that are aged 35 to 44, because it allows them to still stay with family, but also think about pursuing studies. And we're very happy to see that phenomena, because we've been advocating for lifelong learning. And it seems that the pandemic has helped this focus on lifelong learning. The other thing that we saw, and I think it's important to mention it, is the collaborations between institutions. And the technology, I have to share this story with you, because I said earlier that professional and technical education and training, it's hard to do hands-on. So we had a fabulous project of simulation, thanks again to the government of Canada, where we are developing 150 simulations in 3 specific sectors: laboratory technician, nursing, and paramedic, where students can use virtual and augmented reality and be ready when they will go on the labor market. We call it Virtual. It will be available to all institutions in Canada starting in April, and we're very, very excited. So the bottom line is that we saw a lot of innovation because of the pandemic, as you pointed earlier.
Denise, so many great themes there. I couldn't agree with you more that now is a sort of excitement of innovation serving all of the different age groups. And I'm interested there for those who are mid-career as much as I am about the youth. Let's put this in the context of India as a whole. And I'm going to ask Apoorva a question. What are your views on upskilling the youth of India in particular, following on for some of the themes that Denise has shared with us there?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Nadra and ICBC for inviting me for this really very important panel, and we have been working towards finding solutions for collaboration between India and Canada in this sector. Thank you, Freya. Thank you, Denise, for for being part of this wonderful panel. So coming back to your question, of course, we have been. My jurisdiction goes from Manitoba till Atlantics, and I have been traveling whenever the restrictions are lifted. I try and travel to these things, and thanks to technology, there's a lot more of online meetings now with office bearers of these provinces. And wherever I went, there was this common question and this common queries and this common problem in all the provinces, that they need a lot of skilled laborers, and that Indian students and Indian workers have been very instrumental in doing the things back in those provinces. But still, they need a lot of nurses, they need a lot of paramedics, they need simple normal skill jobs, people to cook, people to wash, that kind of job. So we have been trying to find a solution, and of course technology is one of them, and we have been in discussion with some provinces that if there is a possibility of tying up with various institutes both in India and Canada? And is there a possibility of taking this examination which allows people to work in Canada, maybe not immediately, but after a bridge course, after they come to Canada? But is there a possibility where people are taught the Canadian curriculum maybe in the last year, and the examination could the skilled labor could be prepared for the examination back in India, or even they can take the examination back in India, they come here, they do a bridge course, and they are ready to go, which is unlike the current phenomena where even if you're a doctor, you come here, you have to really study for a couple of years and to actually practice it after passing the examination. So these are the things which all of us have to work together, because recognition of degree is another area where we have to work together, because it's still not in place, and it will give a lot of relief in both the countries. I mean, and so these are the few areas which we are working together. Having said that, a lot of things are already happening. Most of the colleges, I've visiting lots of colleges. There's Seneca, there's Constega College, which have 11,000 Indian students, and I recently went to visit them, and these are very skill-oriented college. I recently went to visit them, and I went randomly to 3 classes, and there were 2 classes which had 100% Indian students, and there was 1 class which had like 1 or 2 other nationalities. The rest everybody was Indian. Same I see in Seneca, same I see in Centennial and other colleges. So there's a lot of demand for these skills, and we have to really find a way as governments, maybe, and as to see how this when the person comes, if he or she already possess certain skills, how to reduce the time when he or she can work here in Canada. So this is one area which we all have. I would really love to hear your thoughts on that. How do we do that?
Yeah, Apurva, look, I agree with you. How we make sure that qualifications are transportable country to country, that may be around language skills, around English, which is an area that I've known a lot about over the years, but then also all other skills that people have, whether that be vocational skills or the academic credentials, and then that how degrees are recognized around the world, how people appreciate the value of the master's and bachelor's degrees that young people have, and how they can use those to support their sort of international mobility route is ever critical. I know the UNESCO tells us that it's 5.6 million people that went in 2018 went across a border in order to study in another country. I know that number has dropped in the pandemic, but it'll be coming back up again. I see lots of demand, particularly from India, particular regions in India, in the Punjab region, looking to go and study in Canada, and the way we can all as a group support that group using technology, using portable qualifications is really important for all of us. I don't know, Denise, whether you would like to expand on that at all, and then I'm very conscious we must bring this conversation to a close in order to stick with our agenda timings. Over to you, Denise.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there's something that needs to be said, is that because of the pandemic, there are countries that send the international students away. They send them back. We did not do that in Canada. We took care of our students. And I think this is important. We found accommodations for them in case that their residence had to close, or we kept some residents open to accommodate international students. We even had grocery vouchers for those students that lost their jobs. So this is important. Now, going back to what Consul General was saying, I agree with her that it's important to recognize the credentials. This is one of the most important things. The good news is that there are progress in that vein, and there are also what we call the articulations pathways, where students, in fact, don't need to repeat all what they have done, but there is recognition of the credentials that they have, and they can do a 2+2 or a 3+1. One of the big phenomena that we have observed in the last 5-6 years is an increased growth in postgraduate certificates credentials, attractions for students. They come with either a 3-year diploma from their country or even from Canada, and or a degree, and they come to do this very focused program that is 8 months long plus an internship. And this is extremely, extremely popular, and not only with international students, but also with Canadian students. Why? It's because it allows students to have another type of disciplines, if you want, that help them to be more marketable. Let me give you an example. Many students have business administration diploma or degree, like a lot, but very few have a specialty in data analysis or in cybersecurity. And because of that, the people become very attractive. And what we've seen is that many international students, in fact, choose to do two postgrad certificates. And this, again, increased their marketability. And the good thing about colleges, and you can see them in the, I'm sure you can recognize the map of Canada in my bag, but you may wonder, what are all those little purple dots? In fact, they are colleges across the country. And the beauty when you go in a center that is maybe smaller than the big urban center is that the community literally adopt you. And 95% of Canadians live within 50 kilometers of one of our campus. And the last thing I want to say, again, with respect to what Consul General has said, is in Canada, we have something that is often not well known. It's called PLAR, P-L-A-R, Prior Learning Acquisition Recognition. And it is the recognitions of your competencies so that you do not need to repeat everything that you have done in case you don't have the paper. Because sometimes you may have acquired your competencies at work, but you may not have acquired it in an official academic setting. And this is something important to know because it can help you to accelerate your entry to the job market.
Great. Denise, thank you so much. Lots of themes in there, but the one I will close with is student well-being. Those of us who work in the world of education are here to support people moving forward with their lives through learning, and that's certainly what we in Pearson believe in every day. So thank you so much for your thoughts there. I will stop there because I know that my colleague Siddharth will chair us through the next stage, the panel discussion, make sure that we cover many of these topics. Again, they're very important, but before that, Nadira, is there any comments you would like to make?
Thank you. Thank you, Freya, for steering that very interesting conversation and discussion. And thank you, Consul General and Denise, for all your insights. No, I think we will go on to the panel discussion next, but I would really request Consul General to just give a few concluding remarks, anything that you would like to say so that we can wrap up this session and then go on to the next.
No,
Just
thank
a
you,
few
Nadira,
words.
Thank you, Denise, for those insightful words, and Freya for moderating it so well. I would like to acknowledge what Denise has said, that the kind of support that international students, including Indian students, have got from the Canadian universities and colleges. Really, I mean, I think we have not seen it anywhere else. There were food given, there were coupons for vouchers, they were given money, they were not removed from the hostels, special accommodations were created, special care for the students who got COVID positive. So I definitely want to acknowledge that, and thanks the Canadian government, both the provincial and the federal, for doing this wonderful thing for our students. Also, I would like to know, maybe we can connect separately about this prior learning acquisition recognition, because we were not aware of it, and so many discussions have happened, and this is the first time I was hearing it. So I think we will connect separately with Denise to know more about it and to see what we can do. So I just want to thank that this is a wonderful platform. This is such an important thing, and this is a game changer, Nadir, if I may say that. If there's some movement on this, this will be a game changer. We already have 230,000 Indian students here in Canada, thousands waiting to come. So this would be really, really useful for them, and lot of immigration, as Annabelle has already said. We are the largest immigrants, from the largest immigrants back in Canada. So definitely it will be a game changer. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Consul General, for honoring us with your presence here today. And as you said, this is an important platform. And again, this is just the very beginning, which is why we wanted to start it in this year, because this year we really would like to strengthen education technology, as well as to make sure that we match the skills, the Indian youth, for employment in Canada. And I think if we can all join hands, we have Mr. Ved Tiwari, who's going to be here as head of NSDC, and we have Denise here already. So I think together with yourself and all of us from the High Commission here, Anuj Bhasin, Annabelle, we must find a way forward. And I think this is only the starting point. There's a lot to achieve and a lot to do. So now the next segment is an in-depth discussion on how to leverage technology in higher education and skills development. What are the key EdTech opportunities, partnerships that can be beneficial, and how learning can be made accessible to the youth of India to match international working standards? The panelists will include, of course, Denise from the previous segment, Mr. Ved Mani Tiwari, COO and officiating CEO from the National Skill Development Corporation, Mr. Anuj Bhasin, Trade Commissioner, Education from the High Commission of Canada. And this discussion will be moderated by Mr. Siddharth Banerjee, Managing Director and SVP at Pearson India. Siddharth has extensive expertise in digital education and 2 decades of international experience. Welcome to all of you. Siddharth, request you to take this discussion forward.
Thank you, Nadira. And a very good evening and a good morning to everyone who's tuned in from various different parts of the globe for this rather important set of conversations which are related to education and employability between 2 countries who matter in the global landscape. A big thank you to my colleague at Pearson, Freya Thomas-Monk, for having set up the context so wonderfully with the previous fireside chat. And I'm delighted and privileged to be hosting this particular panel discussion with Anuj, Ved, and Denise. Thank you to the panelists for being here and generously lending both your time as well as your insights. With the context having been set up, I'll dive right into the questions which we have for some of the panelists, which are essentially constructed on 3 parts. The first is, what opportunities exist in Canada and why? What is this kind of a magic that exists, which draws students, which draws people for employment and living purposes into Canada? So that's one part of the conversation. The second is 21st century skills, both in terms of education and employability. And then the third is, what can you do about it, whether you're a student or you're a professional, in terms of equipping yourself in the 21st century digital world. And that's where Pearson plays a role as a company in the education ecosystem of the world, and specifically between Canada and India. So without further ado, I'd like to throw open the panel discussion with first lobbing a question to Denise. Denise, you are an experienced veteran. You've seen this through the years in many different facets and lenses. So my first question to you is, and of course, Denise, I would have loved this to be a little bit more face-to-face, but given the pandemic, we are doing this over Zoom. So I know that this panel discussion will go a little bit sequential, but for all the panelists, please feel free to pitch in as well. So Denise, question to you. Why is it that college graduates, and specifically we're talking about the Canadian experience, have such a high rate of employment in their disciplines post graduation? Because that's an important part for us to answer from an Indian perspective. And then, given the fact that we are living in a global digital village, what role do you think, from your perspective, does technology have to play in this?
Okay, this is a fabulous question, Siddharth. So, what is the magic sauce, if you want? In fact, there are a number of ingredients, if I may use that expression. The first one is that the training in Canada in our post-secondary colleges is adapted, it's tailored to the needs of the labor market. And the way we do it, it's because we have what we call program advisory committees. We have over 10,000 programs across the country, and we have over 10,000 program advisory committees. And they are made up of people from the industry that provide advice on the curriculum, on the equipment, on the competencies that are needed, on the labor market needs and trends. And they provide also very important internships often, or advice on the internships. So there is a synergistic, if you want, collaborations between the employer, between the industry, and between the post-secondary institutions. And we have helped 100 countries around the world, in fact, to do this. And because we all know that the German model and the Switzerland model does not work if you do not have many, many big companies in your country. So if you are a country of small and medium enterprise, you need to have those program advisory committees.
Right.
And in fact, the result is 91% of placement within 6 months, and 93% of satisfactions of employers with respect to our graduates. I'll say very quickly 4 more ingredients of the magic sauce. Is that we have a variety of credentials, from few days of training to a year, 2 years, 3 years, a degree, or a postgrad certificate, as I was talking about in the first session. We also have compulsory internships in most of our programs. This is crucial because you want to prepare people for the job market. And the last element of the magic sauce, because of time, we do not only focus on technical skills. We also focus on the other important skills that are important. We saw during the pandemic how important it was to have adaptability and resilience. We teach those things: communication, teamwork, and be able to have critical thinking. And the last thing, I cannot not say it, is that in our colleges, we do applied research. So it means we help real companies to solve problems that they have. And it means that our students acquire this innovative thinking also to help companies solve real problems so they are ready to hit the road.
Wonderful, wonderful. That recipe, kind of made me drool. And I was just taking notes as you were saying the 5 ingredients, the way you put it. Thank you for that, Denise. If we were to then move over to India, and we have with us Ved Mani Tiwari, who's the COO and officiating CEO of the National Skills Development Corporation. Ved, for a country like India, with the size of the youth that we have, the demographic dividend, as we call it, and millions of young students looking to get into jobs and careers, I think some of the principles that Denise articulated are worth thinking about for us. So on the skill development end of the spectrum in India, how do we ensure that students can be more employable, ready for the industry with 21st century skills? And from your perspective, how can we leverage technology and innovation to ensure a model which is perhaps more where the industry and academia, to the point that Denise mentioned, can shake hands, partner, and therefore work towards the benefit of 21st century learners and job seekers. Ved.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. And first of all, my gratitude to ICBC and Pearson for inviting me to this discussion. Very warm good evening to everybody who's joining from India, and good morning to those who are joining from Canada. When we talk about the integration of education and skill, one decisive step that was taken by the government of India last year, that rather year 2020, when the National Education Policy 2020 brought in a convergence of education and skill. One of the objectives of the policy is to connect at least 50% of the students with at least one skill by 2025. Last year in July 2021, one more step was taken in this direction, that an academic bank of credit concept was brought in, where the credits between education and skill are transferable, and that gives a better opportunity for learners to take vital decisions in their life. The other thing that has been done is that on 1st of January this year, we launched 5,000 skill hubs across the country as a pilot project. These 5,000 skill hubs have come up in the educational institutions, be they schools, be they universities, engineering colleges. These our skill hubs have been set up to make skills aspirational for both in education and out of education children. So this way, if you see, there is a lot of steps are being taken to integrate education and skill. NSDC is the agency who is responsible for this government program of integration of education and skill.
Right.
On the other hand, NSDC has very strong industry connect, because we operate through 37 sector skill councils, and practically every sector in Indian economy is overseen by one of the sector skill councils which report to NSDC. This way, we are completing this chain of education, skill, and industry, and that provides an opportunity for industry and academia, now real opportunity to come together and help this bridge gap. I would also like to bring one more thing here, is that India has been at the forefront of digital governance. We all know how dramatically the biometric ID of Aadhaar changed the country.
Yep.
From inclusion perspective. Similarly, the UPI, which brought in financial inclusion at the doorstep of every single Indian. Now, pursuing with this theme, NSDC is coming out with a very innovative digital architecture, where the Aadhaar stack, which is already open source digital architecture, UPI stack, which allows the interoperability among financial institutions, and a third layer, which is third layer of digital architecture, which is being built in India on open standards and protocol, is called ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce. So you might have seen that the whole world is moving to a platform of platforms, but those platforms own the data of individuals. This ONDC is a discovery platform where buyers and sellers can discover each other without being tied to any particular platform. How we are going to use this? That in education and skill and employment sector, the biggest problem is a discovery. I have a skill, somebody needs that skill. How do we discover each other? I need a particular content to enhance my skill. Somebody can provide that skill. How do I discover this? So discovery is becomes an important factor in this. The financial architecture allows the loans, student loans, the CSR funding, the ESG funding, government funding, all sorts of funding to come and help individuals acquire those skills. And the most important part is a trust the layer that we are building, which is based on open protocols of registries and credentials.
Right.
For the first time, India is building an architecture where proof of education, proof of work, proof of skill, and proof of reputation. Today, when an Uber driver operates an Uber cab, the data, they might have got ratings, which are the only assets that they build over the period of time, but those ratings belong to Uber, not to the individual.
That's right.
That is a proof of reputation, which is the biggest asset that the person is building. We are democratizing it, and we are making it available to the owner of the data who owns this. So this is going to be a very powerful digital governance architecture that we are building. I would take one more minute from you, because I was very keenly hearing when Consul General Ms. Apurva was talking about how do we make Indian talent available to Canada. And for your information, for the information of everybody here, this is high on the agenda of government and NSDC. And we have recently set up a subsidiary company, which is called NSDC International. And this company is focused on bridging the talent need of the world from the demographic dividend that India has. We are keen to work with institutions in Canada to prepare the bridge courses as Ms. Apurva was talking about, while we continue to work on harmonization of standards. But not to lose time, we would like to work on bridge courses and prepare. NSDC would like to set up institutions where this friction and the cost of conformance to Canadian standards is taken care of at the Indian soil itself. So I thought that this is an important point that I wanted to bring to the notice of everyone here, and happy to connect on these two matters.
This is fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Ved. In fact, I am keen to know a little bit more about ONDC, and I will dig out a little bit of more research and get back in touch with you. I think we all know in India how having the UPI stack has unleashed innovation and inclusion, not only in the public sector, but indeed a lot of private sector, and that's unleashed job creation opportunities and value creation. So that's certainly super interesting. Thank you for that. If I were to then kind of look at the innovation and the action that's happening, the secret sauce that Denise spoke about, and the 2 or 3 pillars that Ved spoke about is happening in India, with the stack being developed, with NSDC International focusing on a few priorities, the kind of bridge between the two gets neatly provided then by our next panelist. Delighted to have Mr. Anuj Bhasin here, who's the Trade Commissioner Education with the High Commission of Canada. Anuj, if I may ask you, currently, if you look at between the two exciting countries, Canada and India, there exist several memorandum of understandings, MOUs, that seek to improve education, skill development, and employment outcomes, both for Canada and for India. Going ahead in today's 21st century digital world, do you think the focus is on getting more such partnership opportunities, more MOUs, or are you also looking at adding more teeth to the implementation strategy in terms of the targets of the existing MOUs? What are some of the priorities that you are looking at?
Thank you, Siddharth, and good evening and to everyone joining from India, and good morning to colleagues from Canada. Thank you to Nadira, ICBC, and obviously PSN team for organizing such an intriguing discussion. And I think it's at a very opportune time that I've got my chance, given that what Consul General and Ved has touched upon the skills side. And obviously EdTech is another important theme as part of this webinar, but I'll touch upon the vocational education side of it. So to start with, as my colleague Annabelle mentioned, that we have a very active partnership file going on the education side. Upward of 550 odd MOUs are there to enable student, faculty, and researcher mobility, by and large on the higher ed side. But and given that we've been involved specifically, if I talk about the skills sort of MOUs that were signed. So obviously, I mean, NSDC was one of the key agencies on the Indian side, and then we had a number of colleges on the Canadian side when Prime Minister Modi visited Canada in 2015. So I have a bit of a corporate memory to that. The key are the institutions that have to figure out how to activate these MOUs. But as someone who worked closely and as an observer, I'll probably share my reflections as to what could be done better to activate these MOUs. We've had 4 academies of excellence that were launched, but then they needs to translate into cohorts being moved from India to Canada, and probably in the long term vice versa as well. You never know. So first point for an MOU in general would be identifying funding sources. In this case, that was resolved. NSDC acted as a enabler for Indian academic institutions as well as industry players who were looking to work with the Canadian colleges as part of this particular programming to provide soft loans. Obviously, there had to be some token funding that had to be provided by the Indian partners to set up those academies of excellence. So the broad contour was to set up academies of excellence in the form of training of trainers, and in the process, look at certification programs, look at assessment tools for different, and work with the Sector Skills Council to even set for certain job occupations, set up national occupation standards. Again, all these things have happened over the period of time, but at that time, that was the broad contour of those MOUs. So the expectations are very, very important to be aligned when we look at signing such MOUs. Are we looking at an employment outcome? Are we looking at a labor mobility outcome? Are we looking at an in-country training wherein we are looking at the credentials being imparted in, say, in India, wherein students or the working professionals are upskilling and then contributing to the local economy? Or are we looking at a migration outcome? From an employment perspective, are we looking at working with Canadian companies operating in India or Indian companies operating in Canada? Is there a bridge that can be resolved? So these expectations needs to be aligned when one go about signing such signing the MOUs, and that could have been done better. In terms of objectives, what is the objective for the Canadian institutions? As a Canadian college, am I purely looking at as a revenue export? Come in as a service provider, provide my curriculum, monetize it, train the trainers, repatriate my profit and get back? Or am I looking at being a partner in going through with this journey? That is very, very important as to what my objective is when I'm signing this particular MOU. And that needs to be then followed up with an action plan or an engagement plan that has specific milestones to achieve the broader set of objectives. So this, I thought that, by virtue, this would be probably, extrapolable to all sorts of MOUs, but specific to the skills, which is an area that we are focusing besides the EdTech as part of this particular panel. I thought of, sharing my reflections.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anuj. I think that kind of gives us a kind of a tie-in terms of the secret sauce that we spoke about, the emerging pieces of what is happening and all the action in India and NSDC enabling that, and then the increased cooperation between the two countries. So thank you for that. It ties up neatly. Let me then move on to the second part of the way Nadira announced the topic for this panel discussion, which was technology. And what is changing as far as learner needs, institution needs, the economic cooperation between two countries. So if I look at myself as a professional, I have my Excel sheets on my laptop, I have my iPhone, but I am also a pen and paper kind of a guy. I like to make lists on paper. And so therefore, in my mind, there is always this thing of saying, how much will technology change experiences, including learning and training and development, and how much will face-to-face and in-person matter? So if I were to look at that whole experience in the learning and education and assessment world, let's come to a couple of points for the panelists. So I'll start again with Denise. Denise, while we are all talking about and working in technology or technology-related fields, what are some pros and cons, some limitations that technology might have in training? And where do you think, in your perspective, where is in-person education and learning and development still important, still key?
Thank you very much for this great questions. We were able during the last 2 years to really be able to answer these questions. It was almost like a laboratory, if you want, for the world. We saw the benefits of technology that we talked about in the previous session, so I won't repeat those. But what we saw also is that it's not only about developing the technical skills for the learners. You also need to be ready for the job, meaning working as an employee, if you want. So it's not only about technology, and you need to be a good team player with your colleagues.
Yes.
You need to be a good communicator. You need to be able to engage with a customer or engage with the public. And the advantage of what we have done in the college, even during the pandemic, in fact, we didn't do everything just online. We ensured that there were some portions that were given in person. That meant that sometimes we had to repeat 3 or 4 times to respect social distancing in the classroom. So what we would have offered once, we had to do it 3 or 4 times to ensure that there were only 10 people in the laboratories, for example, or in the classroom with all the equipment. And so this was key, so that people were able to practice, to do the hands-on, and then others were able to observe them and learning at the same time as they were observing them. And so that's why we saw that it was so important to be able to be both online, but also find ways to be there in person. The one thing that we saw also is that the importance of upskilling and reskilling. And when I mention this, it's not only for the current student, but for everybody. Because, and the pandemic has shown this, because suddenly there was technology everywhere, where in fact before there was no technology. So it meant that there were some employees that needed to be upskilled and reskilled because they didn't have the know-how to, and this was key. So for me, it shows again the importance of lifelong learning. And it's over the time when, you know, you would go to school for 25 years, and maybe not 25 years, but maybe for 20 years, and then that was it. Nowadays, you need to continuously learn. And in fact, every year you should, you know, at the end of the year, you should make a reflections. What did I learn this year? And how did I improve my learning and my upskilling? Because the market, the labor market is such that if you do not do it, others will take over. And that's why what is so popular in our colleges is what we call micro-credentials. We now have thousands of those micro-credentials, and colleges have always been doing short-term courses, you know, since we were created 52 years ago. But what's happening now is that there is more and more. We even did a paper that I would be pleased to share on a framework for micro-credentials, because at one point, you know, the micro-credential was a banana, sometimes it was an orange, and sometimes it was an apple, but sometimes it was a carrot. And so my members said to me, Denise, we need a framework for what is a micro-credentials. And we've agreed that a micro-credential should not be linked to a number of hours. What was important, it has to be based on competencies. It has to answer a real need of the labor market, crucial. It has to be assessed also, and there needs to be a way to recognize it. Vedmani earlier talked about, the digital creds, the digital credentials. This is something that we are working on right now, and it's called My Creds, and it's very, very popular because the students own their data, they own their information, and they're able to share it with employers after and so on. So I'll stop here because of the time, but there would be way more to talk about.
Thank you so much, Denise. And I would, we've been talking within the company about short-term credentials, which are recognized by the industry, and your microcreds insight that you just shared with us is very, very valuable. And there is also a paper that you alluded to. I'll find a way of picking up that paper for the benefit of our larger audience. So thank you for that.
It's on our websites.
Oh, wonderful. Made a note of that. Thank you so much.
Okay.
If I were to therefore kind of dig a little deeper and move to with NSDC, and now we're kind of going a little deeper into technology and saying that how can stakeholders co-curate programs that enable upgradation of skills of students, which are in sync with the labor market, like Denise said, with the industry. So let's say blockchain or artificial intelligence, machine learning, or UI UX design, and also get practical experience by working with virtual labs, platforms, so that there is, for students, access to these courses across the large and diverse university setup that we have across India. Any thoughts and perspectives on that?
So one of the thing is that we are giving renewed focus on apprenticeship now, internship and apprenticeship, because that is that gives a clear exposure of students to on the job. But also during this pandemic, we have all learned that digital could be a powerful enabler for learning and collaboration.
Right.
We are working with several of our partners who until now used to focus only on setting up physical centers for training. They all have started interacting with digital learning providers all over the world. And we are collaborating with them because the opportunity, the skill hub and the whole education skilling convergence is providing an opportunity for the NSDC to first time to reach to students. Until now, the NSDC catered to mostly out of education clientele. Now we are reaching out to students, and we are consciously building a community with learners. And so that the large physical network that we have on the ground with our partners and these new skill hubs which are coming up in the educational institutions, if we do a digital architecture overlay on top of that and build an LMS which can be leveraged by multiple providers of learning to distribute the learning content. And continuing with that thought, the Future Skill Prime has been launched with the collaboration with the Ministry of Information Technology and IT. And in all our sectoral councils, we are giving a lot of focus on how should we bring digital into everything. Today, you call it medicine or automobile, everything is semiconductor now. Within the 1 week of discovery of the genome code of the virus, 9 companies announced vaccines. So everything is becoming digital today, and we are giving it renewed focus in all of our sector councils.
Got it. And if I can just double click on one part that you mentioned, with, which is that you spoke about the pandemic literally opening up a lot of our eyes in terms of how technology can enable many different members of the industry workforce to access online educations for upskilling, etc. From your vantage point at NSDC, what opportunities can students, educational institutions, learners, people looking at their first jobs or their second jobs, what can they prioritize in this context from the vantage point of where you sit?
See, what is happening is that we are seeing third wave of COVID, and disruptions have become the way of life. And some way or the other, now the humanity is coming to terms that we have to live with disruptions. In some, they may be localized, but they will continue to happen. That means that organizations have to learn the continuity of business when the physical presence is not there. That is an opportunity that we are working in, that how can we do collaborative projects. And while we all adopted digital to meet the need of the hour, but it also, I also believe this is massive opportunity for explosion of creativity, because if we bring all the minds to collaborate on common projects,
Right.
then the idea is the potential is immense. So from priority perspective, we are reaching out to industries, that do they have projects where students in academic institutions and the academia there, if they can help the companies to solve those problems through by way of hackathon or ideathons. So these are the way that we are trying to work with industry and academia. So priority is to find projects where collaboration can happen.
Wonderful, thank you. And that kind of connects back with the previous point that Denise made in terms of her 5 elements of the secret sauce that we were talking about, the Canadian ecosystem. So thank you for that.
The other possibility that I see, that today Denise is talking about micro credentialing, etc. They are all very relevant for here, and I'll try to connect with her. How do we connect with schools and colleges in Canada to bring the education from Canada to India, and provide the talent to Canada from here? So she, both the countries are benefited. The digital allows us to achieve that.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely. And that actually is a very neat segue into a person and an organization, Anuj, who kind of has the vantage point at the corridor of Canada and India from his vantage point. So Anuj, if I may ask you, how are you looking at education players, including organizations like Pearson, collaborate with stakeholders in the overall ecosystem to improve the learning experience of students and working professionals, so that it leads to better outcomes, what we typically call a win-win for everybody involved? Are there any success stories or any practical experiences that you can share with us, please?
Thanks, Siddharth. I mean, to be honest, Pearson's tools are fairly sophisticated. I've seen a bit of your thing. So primarily the key for, personalized experiences, that as much as possible, any personalized learning engagement that produce strong learning outcomes, sets us helps us achieve the goal. So the LMS, the learning management system, needs to be efficient enough to tweak based on the profile of the student, based on the behavior, based on the interest, performance, and then AI is brought into place to call up, so to say, relevant resources that would be required for the student to see. And if I probably want to expand this particular thing, I mean, English language vernacular is one of the big drivers, and that's why you need this kind of sophisticated technology. But then, due to pandemic, a lot of academic institutions had to move online, and I mean, they've sort of moved online on Google, on Zoom, on Teams, WebEx, etc. But to have asynchronous mode of learning, what are the opportunities that one can look at collaborating, what are the best practices, because Canadian institutions had a relatively, by virtue of this particular pandemic touching North America before India, the transition was a bit earlier, and they've been nimble in sort of transitioning. So there are a lot of scope for sharing of best practices there. We've already talked about the LMS thing. I mean, if you look at the success stories, there are few sophisticated players. I mean, I work for the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, so probably I'll allude an example of a company called D2L, Desire to Learn. They've been working with the All India Council of Technical Education and various higher education as well as school companies in India, being a global company itself, and doing reasonably well in this particular space. Another opportunity by virtue of us pivoting to this, work from home model, or with layoffs happening because of the pandemic, is continuous professional development of working professionals. So that is one area as well where there is a lot of scope to collaborate between Canadian, both academic institutions and companies, and the Indian counterparts, wherein you can look at workforce development solutions, consolidating a lot of college and university certificate program content, offering it online to these professionals who can then go through those materials and get themselves assessed and certified. That will help them with either an upskilling or an employment outcome. I mean, the Indian EdTech space is booming, with a lot of startups, specifically in the EdTech space, really, becoming unicorns in no time. And this is one big area in terms of the content and the working professionals being sort of upgrading themselves. And there's a lot of scope for matchmaking. Again, I mean, if I allude an example, there's a company called Better You, headquartered out of Ottawa, having presence in India. They have, more than about 3,500 odd courses, aligned to 800 odd job roles, and fairly, neat solutions, partnered with the Times of India, Hindustan Times, in delivering online learning solutions. At the Trade Commissioner Service, we would encourage, I mean, even NSDC, our colleagues from NSDC, as well as other players who are looking to forge these commercial partnerships, to leverage our network both in Canada and in India, and we'll be happy to facilitate those partnerships.
Fabulous, fabulous. And I've made a note of Better You. I'm going to check that out. So thank you, Anuj, for that. So as we kind of draw this discussion to a close, and if I had to kind of distill out three things that might be very pertinent to each and every member of the audience who's tuned in to this particular panel discussion, I think three things that all our speakers have been saying, coming at it from different angles. The first is the importance of credentials, whether it's education that you do or the reskilling that you do as a student or as a professional. And Denny spoke specifically about micro-credentials. Ved spoke about the fact that there is now a platform to recognize that and make it kind of obvious to a larger ecosystem. So I think the first bit is on credentials. The second part is on practical experience. So whether it's internships, if you're a student, to the right jobs which map with the 21st century job market. And I think, again, important ways in which technology is enabling that, including the example that Anuj gave about Better You, which I will check, or the stack that Ved spoke about, which is being built in India, the ONDC. And then the third part is the role of education companies like Pearson in terms of enabling the Canada-India bridge, both for students as well as for anybody who's seeking employment. And therefore, again, the need for either a student as a learner or as a job applicant looking to live overseas and work overseas, to be connected with all the developments that education companies like Pearson and others are doing to promote this corridor of India and Canada. So I think fascinating points. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Ved. Thank you, Anuj. I have 2 pages of notes from our 45-minute, 50-minute conversation. It certainly enriched me, and I hope it's enriched some of our audience tuned in as well. This is a recording session, so I'm assuming this will be available to a larger set of audiences, and it'll be valuable for them as well. With that, it's my privilege to turn the forum back to Nadira. Thank you, Nadira, for having me here, and I hope this has been helpful to a larger audience towards a common cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. This has really been a fabulous discussion. And, you've got 2 pages of notes. I've got 3-4 pages of notes right here. And all the points that we want to go forward, we'd like to really have meetings separately together with Denise, with Ved, with Anuj, Annabelle, with Pearsons, and of course, with Consul General in Canada, and connect all the dots. So when you outlined the 3 points, Siddharth, one more point when you were wrapping up is also the importance of chambers like ours, organizations like the Indo-Canadian Business Chamber, which recognizes the two components in both the countries and then joins the dots to connect the two. And this is one very important area, education. It has got a full dedication and motivation. We're truly dedicated to to both leveraging in education technology, and secondly to get the employment available in Canada to the people in India who need that employment. So we really want to connect the two. Thank you to each one of you, and a special thank you to Consul General, for honoring us with her presence. Thank you to Pearsons for enabling such a fabulous discussion. Thank you to Denise, to Ved, to Anuj, Annabelle, all of you for being here and encouraging us. Thank you to my team for having, helped us put this together. And to all of you who've been listening, we've got a large number of people who were here. And as Siddharth, as you said, this is recorded. We will keep, showing this on YouTube, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who couldn't join today, but would be very interested in hearing this conversation. Thank you, everybody. And with that, I wish good night to the people in India and to Canada. Have a great day. And thank you for getting up so early for us.